Right now on Matter of Fact, stopped before they even crossed the border. Do you know what really happens when Central Americans try to enter the U.S. legally?
After a certain point in time in detention, people, give up their rights and go home.
And what's next for the thousands of migrant children already separated from their parents? Plus, they usually disagree on just about everything. But now these bipartisan buddies are trying to break the political gridlock on Capitol Hill.
The American public expects nothing less of us. They want us to come to Washington and not have this continuous cycle of bickering.
And a makeover worth the wait.
After 3 years and $40 million, one of Yosemite's crown jewels has reopened to the public. I'm Soledad O'Brien. Welcome to Matter of Fact. President Trump's policy of separating children from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border did not survive in the court of public opinion. And his new policy to keep families together may not survive in a court of law. He's keeping his zero-tolerance policy intact and wants the Department of Homeland Security to pursue criminal charges against anyone who crosses the border illegally. The executive order aims to keep entire families in detention centers indefinitely as their cases wind through a long court process. That's a practice that judges have barred under previous administrations. There's already a backlog of 700,000 cases in the immigration courts. Former immigration judge Paul Wickham-Schmidt joins us to take a look at how this could all play out. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, so a lot to get to. First of all, when somebody who is trying to come into the country presents at the border, either they decide they're going to illegally cross into the border or they're going to present themselves for amnesty. What are the options for Border Patrol?
Well, when somebody comes to a port of entry, they're supposed to have papers, either papers showing they're a U.S. citizen, papers showing that they're a foreign national who has a visa, papers showing that they're a green card holder or coming back as a student. If they have no papers and they appear to be foreign nationals, not U.S. citizens, then they can be summarily excluded, summarily ordered removed by the inspector, the CBP inspector. However, the inspector is supposed to ask.
Customs and Border Patrol.
Right, but they're supposed to ask before executing that order, is there any reason that you fear return? And if the person says, yes, I can't go back, I'm afraid, then they're supposed to be referred to a different office.
So that puts them in a different category. Right. Now, theoretically, they can go and ask for asylum. Right. How did things change in April? Well,
in April, the Attorney General decided for the first time, well, I can't say this. Other administrations have tried it. It's always been a failure. But as a deterrent, he decided to prosecute everybody who crossed the border outside of a port of entry. There is a crime of illegal entry, but for the first offense is a misdemeanor, minor crime. And for most of our history, people, particularly if it's their first time, haven't been prosecuted for misdemeanor.
So the reason the children are being separated is that you have to have a dual path because of the Flores Agreement.
Right.
Children can't have that same path that adults have.
Well, and the children aren't being charged with the crime, so they can't be placed in criminal detention. You're right. The children go into the immigration system right away, while the parents don't get to the immigration system until they've gone through court. So,
which brings us to the Flores Agreement, which people have been talking a lot about. So the Flores Agreement said that children cannot...
It's a court order. It was a stipulation, but it's a court order.
But children can't be held indefinitely.
Yeah, children can't, not only can't they be held indefinitely, they can only be held for 20 days, and they're only supposed to be held in facilities that are licensed and suitable for child detention.
So how long, potentially, could a family be in detention while they wait for their case to make it through the court?
A detained asylum case, based on my experience, can take anywhere from, in Arlington, it was probably from 6 months to 2 years if it goes all the way to the appellate courts and sometimes comes back. You can't possibly have a fair asylum hearing for somebody in 20 days.
Sometimes I think when listening to these conversations around the people who are trying to enter the country, especially those who have an asylum claim or think they have an asylum claim, is that they're all criminals, it's illegal, but there are actually legal protections.
The law says that an individual arriving at the border, port of entry in the United States, regardless of whether they have any legal status or not, has a right to apply for asylum. Now, what they shouldn't be doing is entering the country without going to a point of inspection. But that doesn't deprive them of their right to apply for asylum.
So that's my question. So how do you think this proceeds? I mean, will this go into family detention now?
Well, what do I think will happen? I think if the federal courts have backbone, they'll stand up, they'll put an end to this. Flores protects fundamental rights of the youngest and most vulnerable. Not only shouldn't it be changed by law, it should be enacted into law so that no future administration is allowed to carry on these types of grotesque human rights abuses.
Judge Paul Schmidt, it's so nice to have you in to give us an explainer and walk me through this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Next on Matter of Fact, meet the two lawmakers who say they can fix America's crumbling roads, bridges, and schools without raising your taxes.
It's just a win-win-win.
But can the bill pass? Plus,
the Trump administration washed out the national ocean policy of his predecessor, President Barack Obama.
Is this bad for the environment or actually good for the economy? And the U.S. government once operated more than 1,000 orphanages. Now that number is 0. Do you know why?
The images of young children being held in secure facilities without their parents have sparked an unprecedented backlash. Some have likened the facilities to prisons or concentration camps. Others, on the right, have compared them to summer camps and boarding schools. Perhaps they're most like an institution that was abolished more than 50 years ago in this country. Orphanages. According to one estimate, in 1900, there were about 100,000 children living in orphanages in the United States. By the 1950s, the orphanage system had been replaced by the current foster care model. Dr. Charles Nelson is a professor of pediatrics at Harvard University. He's in Newton, Massachusetts today. It's nice to see you, sir. Thanks so much for joining us. Walk me through the history of orphanages. Was it at 1800 the height of the number of kids who were in orphanages in this country?
Right. I mean, sometime in the 1700s, the first orphanages started cropping up. There was one in New Orleans. There were other cities that had these. And they increased over the years, over the centuries, really. And it became the support system for how to house and take care of orphans or abandoned children. And this continued for some number of years. And then starting in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, people began to get concerned about kids coming out of orphanages, and they gradually began to be replaced by the current system of foster care.
What were the conditions like in those early orphanages? I mean, how were they housed? What did it look like?
Sure. I mean, I think we probably all have visions of Charles Dickens' orphanage, and in the United States it weren't so different. There would be rooms with large numbers of children in them, very few caregivers. Sometimes they were stern. The kids would be sleeping on cots. It would be very much like a detention center. And in fact, if you look at pictures of orphanages in this country 50 or 60 years ago, they greatly resemble what we're seeing on the news right now on the border states.
So the facilities that we've been seeing pictures from, we've been told by some of the people who had worked there and had visited that there are rules that say you're not allowed to comfort the children. A crying child a caregiver can't run over and hug them, which I think has been particularly distressing to people who hear that.
It's often deadly quiet when you walk into an orphanage because kids have learned if they express distress, if they cry, no one's going to pay attention to them. So they learn not to cry. And I think that it's heartbreaking watching these scenes. So a child who will have been traumatized by having been removed from their parental care and now placed with strangers, with large numbers of kids, those children are going to be anxious, they're going to be distressed, and the thought that you can't comfort them is really heartbreaking. And, of course, is antithetical to what we know would foster good development. So if we have any hope of making the situation right, leaving aside the need to reunite them with their families, the other thing we need to do is look after their emotional well-being. Is there any ability to recover from a traumatic experience where, I mean, some of these kids will be detained for, we don't exactly know how long, but certainly some have been in for months and some might potentially be in for longer. It looks like at this moment there's no plan that's been codified about what to do with the children that we've already seen on television, and there's thousands of them. Can you recover from this? Sure. So there's a couple of factors we have to think about and consider when we try to predict whether these children will recover from this experience. One includes how old the child was when this occurred. If we're talking about a 6-month-old versus a 10-year-old, that's very different. My prediction is that the younger the child and the longer this goes on, the more likely there to be lasting harm. Even for older children who may have the mental capacity to sort of understand their situation, unless their emotional needs are being met, this could also be horribly traumatic for them. And again, the longer this goes on and the greater the uncertainty, the more likely there is to be lasting harm. Remember, kids like consistency and structure and certainty, and this puts them in a position where they may not know where their parents are, if they'll ever see them again. They may not know anyone they're with. And all of these things sort of conspire to elevate the risk of long-term harm. Dr. Charles Nelson from Harvard University. Thank you, sir, for your time. We appreciate it. My pleasure.
When we come back, a rare sight in Washington, Republicans and Democrats complimenting each other.
He's so easy to work with.
It's like a love connection here.
Can this political odd couple teach Congress how to compromise? Plus, they can grow 300 feet tall, weigh 2 million pounds, and live thousands of years, surviving fires and droughts. What makes these trees so resilient?
Immigration is dominating the conversation on Capitol Hill, but Congress is also dealing with other issues like infrastructure. Collapsing roads and bridges, unsafe drinking water, and rundown schools are all problems that both parties say we need to fix. But like many problems facing Republicans and Democrats, they usually don't agree on the solution. Now, conservatives and liberals have reached common ground on an infrastructure bill that would invest in America's poorest communities. Democratic Congressman Lacy Clay of Missouri and Republican Congressman Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania. Nice to have you both. Very rarely does a liberal member of Congress and a conservative member of Congress sit down and come up with bills together effectively. What made this work this time?
Well, I think for Lacy and I, we both understand that there's so many underserved communities. While the economic atmosphere, environment has changed, it hasn't changed for everybody in the same way. And we're looking at the inner cities right now. We're saying, why don't we find a way to fund infrastructure projects and also reduce the debt that take the burden off the American taxpayer, but do the right things for the right reasons? And good things are happening.
And when you think about it, we've been talking about infrastructure for almost 2 years. We think that this legislation will help kickstart that discussion, that debate, and it will give us some substance to work around. And when you think about the inner cities throughout this country, they have been hollowed out. There has been a lack of investment. All of my life in St. Louis, for instance, we have seen services withdrawn from those areas, the city not supporting infrastructure, and neither in the state either supporting an infusion of economics. And we think that this legislation will give us an opportunity to provide employment opportunities for a impoverished communities around this nation.
How does it work?
Well, we're looking at underperforming assets, and we're saying, look, we have a lot of things on the books right now. In fact, it's about $2 trillion that the Treasury is holding through the agriculture. These are underperforming notes, and we're saying, why
that means that people haven't been paying them back for at least 90 days.
Back. And you know the other thing, so they're they're valued at a much higher than what they're actually worth on the market. And I think for most of us, we would look at any of our balance sheets and say, I have an asset, but it's not really worth what it's supposed to be, and it's just going to die there. So what we thought is, if you can take those underperforming notes, get them marked to market, where people then will take a look and they'll invest in those and they'll buy those. Now, it's not going to be at the price they're on the books at, but it's going to be real money that we can use for real things.
This is fiscally responsible.
Absolutely.
When you think about it. 50% going to pay down the national debt and 50% going towards needed infrastructure improvements.
Do you think because you guys are such polar opposites sort of politically, that that's going to encourage your colleagues on both sides of the aisle to say, well, if they've been able to figure it out, then we can come and support this bill realistically?
We would hope so. I mean, that's why I jumped at the opportunity when Mike brought it to me and others and said, look, this is a way to attract economic development to your communities who sorely need it. I had to go for it because it was in the best interest of the people that I serve, as well as the people that he served.
You know, it doesn't really matter that Lacey's in the Black Caucus and I'm in the Republican Study Committee, or that Ted Budd is part of the Freedom Caucus. What does matter is when Americans can look at their government and say, you know what, this is working because we have the right people at the right place and on the right issues, and they're working for us. This guy's easy to work with me, and we have good chemistry.
It's like a love connection here. I can't wait to see what else you guys work on.
Well, yeah, hey, listen, who knows? It can get really big. It can get really big.
Thank you for coming and talking to me.
Thanks, Soledad.
Thank you for having
Thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah, my
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Coming up next, President Trump's plan to roll back protections for oceans and lakes is making waves. Will it create a flow of cash into the economy, or just have a ripple effect? Plus, a peaceful place to grow. Will getting rid of a parking lot preserve these historic trees?
Now to a feature we like to call We're Paying Attention Even If You're Too Busy. The Trump administration washed out the national ocean policy of his predecessor, President Barack Obama. In 2010, President Obama issued an executive order that focused heavily on conservation and climate change. It was meant to protect oceans, coasts, and the Great Lakes. President Obama's policy was written shortly after the deadly BP Deepwater Horizon drilling explosion, the largest and most expensive oil spill to date. It killed nearly a dozen workers, sent 210 million gallons of oil spilling into the Gulf of Mexico. At the time, Obama's executive order was considered controversial because it set up a federal council to oversee programs and decisions that could impact oceans and Great Lakes. Republicans called it too bureaucratic. President Trump's executive order reverses the policy and encourages more drilling and other industrial uses of the oceans and Great Lakes. Industries that extract energy and resources from the seas support the move. They say it'll create energy security and boost jobs. Conservation groups lashed out, saying it's irresponsible, and it means states don't have a say in protecting their own coasts.
When we return, they've been called the noblest of God's trees.
These endangered trees are some of the largest and oldest living things on Earth.
Why these majestic trees are rooted in our country's history.
After 3 years and $40 million, one of Yosemite's crown jewels has reopened to the public. The Mariposa Grove in California's Sierra Nevada mountains is home to 500 giant sequoia trees. These endangered trees are some of the largest and oldest living things on Earth. They can grow to 300 feet tall, weigh more than 2 million pounds. And the oldest known giant sequoia is approximately 2,500 years old. Part of the tree's resilience comes from their bark. It can be up to 3 feet thick, enabling the trees to withstand wildfires, disease, and freezing cold winters. They even adapted to survive California's historic drought. But park rangers were worried about the human impact on the trees, including exhaust fumes from the thousands of cars that drove through the grove daily. So they began the restoration project, the largest in the park's history, to return the grove to a more natural state. Now, visitors will be transported on shuttle buses, walk through the grove on special pathways, enjoying what naturalist John Muir called the noblest of God's trees. And that's a fact. And that's it for Matter of Fact. I'm Soledad O'Brien, and we will see you back here next week.